Hey everyone, I want to bring your attention to an interesting, let's say, bug that might arise for some folks in their implementation of page fragment. And I say might because there are a lot of different avenues you can take. So I just want to point out one of the issues that might come up, and it's one of the it's one of those bugs where it's difficult to consistently throw it. So you may actually have an issue but not realize it. So I just want to show you what the problem is and then give you the solution. So here in my page fragment, I have my web view. So this is a partially completed implementation of page fragment. I have a web view or here rather, and on line 50 of this implementation, I have a web view client that I am assigning to my web view. And this web view client has a callback on page finished. Now, this callback has a very interesting thing that it's doing, which is, well, it's interesting on the surface. Or rather, it's boring on the surface, but interesting in its details. The thing about this callback is it's trying to access a view model, page data view model. And this specific view model is initialized lazily here. So that's the first thing. It is a view model instance that is linked to the parent fragment, but it really doesn't matter. It could be the parent fragment, it could be the activity. The point is it's lazily loading an activity or loading a view model. Now, this interesting situation here happens if you load multiple page fragments, that is multiple tabs at the same time, and that is to say, you are not coding this, but you happen to load a page in a fragment in one of the tabs or in one of the page fragments that is currently off the screen. Now, this can happen for a lot of reasons. Perhaps one of the most straightforward is if you do a device rotation with multiple pages loaded in the view pager. The problem that can occur is that when multiple fragments are in a view pager, sometimes the view pager will try to load fragments that are not currently visible. And as it turns out, the fragments may not be attached officially at the time this code executes. That is, a fragment can be attached and then detached at some point while your web view is still performing some operation. Your web view does not stop executing when a fragment detaches. This becomes a problem for us, however, because if this callback is invoked, on page finished is invoked, after a fragment is detached, then it turns out this attempt to access the view model will throw an exception because require parent fragment or require activity may not return a value. It may be null because you are not currently attached to a host. So if that is the case, this whole thing is an error and your application could crash. So it's basically just boils down to the fact that we can't access the view model if we're not currently attached, or certainly not the first time, if we're not currently attached to a parent activity or a parent fragment. There are different workarounds to this, but ultimately all it boils down to is that this call or this attempt to access a view model needs to be protected. It needs to only happen if it is safe to do so. For our purposes, that can be something as simple as just checking if context is null or is not null, as the case may be. If context is not null, that means I am attached to an activity indirectly in this case, or it could just be if parent fragment is not null, or something. I just want to check that the thing I'm supposed to be attached to, I am attached to it. That will allow me to actually get a view model owned by the thing I'm attached to, whether it's my parent fragment or the activity itself. I want to verify that the thing is there and I am attached before I try to access a view model owned by that thing. Again, this is only a problem because this callback can be invoked asynchronously. It can be triggered after a fragment was attached and then detached, or rather it can it can be invoked, it can return after the detach has happened and we are no longer connected to our parent fragment. So simply protecting your call with a gate like this is sufficient to prevent that specific error from occurring. There are nicer ways to do this, but this is sufficient for our purposes. In case you're wondering, the other way to do it could be to set a flag in the I think it's on destroy view callback. So if you wanted to get really, to go higher up with your design, you could measure, or rather check for the invocation of on destroy view. That tells us that we're no longer attached. Or even potentially just looking at on detach as a way to sort of set a flag. But that's overkill for our purposes. It's perfectly fine to simply say, I'm checking if I'm attached to my parent before I attempt to access a view model owned by that parent. So hopefully that's sufficient. And if you have any questions, let me know.